It's been 32 years since The Nanny first burst onto our screens in 1993, bringing us Fran Fine's unforgettable fashion, quick wit, and that unmistakable laugh. The sitcom became an instant classic, and its charming cast won over millions of fans around the world. But what happened after the cameras stopped rolling? In 2025, we're taking a look back at the stars who made the show so iconic and revealing where life has taken them since. Join us as we catch up with the cast of The Nanny, uncovering the twists, turns, and touching moments in their lives over the past 3 decades. You might be surprised by where they are now. And Morgan Gilbert, born on October 16, 1928, played Yetta Rosenberg in The Nanny beginning in 1993, when she was 65 years old. Yetta, with her oversized sunglasses, beehive hairdo, and unapologetic eccentricity, was a scene stealer, often forgetting where she was but never who she was, a woman who lived fully and out loud. But Anne's own life stood in heartbreaking contrast to her character's comedic flair. While her early fame came from The Dick Van Dyke Show, her career was inconsistent and marred by long gaps of unemployment. Offers dwindled as she aged, despite her talent. Her personal life was no less fraught. She married writer-producer George Eckstein, but their relationship was riddled with tension due to his infidelity and professional jealousy. They divorced after 2 decades, leaving Anne emotionally depleted. They had 2 daughters, Nora and Hallie, but Anne was often estranged from them due to her years of untreated depression and reclusive tendencies. Financial struggles plagued her through the 1980s, forcing her to take menial jobs under assumed names. Later in life, she was diagnosed with cancer but chose not to publicize her condition, retreating into solitude. Her final years were spent mostly alone in a small apartment in Los Angeles, visited sporadically by caregivers and only a handful of friends. And Morgan Gilbert died on June 14, 2016, at the age of 87 from cancer. Ray Charles, born on September 23, 1930, appeared on The Nanny in 1997 at the age of 67, playing Sammy, a lively and soulful musician whose scenes brought depth and rhythm to the show. On screen, Sammy exuded charm and joy, but Ray's real life was an intricate symphony of pain and genius. Blinded by glaucoma at the age of 7 and orphaned soon after, Ray fought against unimaginable odds to build a music empire, pioneering soul music while battling heroin addiction for 17 years. Though he eventually overcame his addiction, the trauma it left behind never fully faded. He was married only once, to Della Beatrice Howard Robinson, but their 22-year marriage crumbled due to his constant infidelity and long absences. Ray fathered 12 children with 10 different women, several of whom later sued his estate, claiming they had been abandoned emotionally and financially. In his final years, liver disease ravaged his body, and he spent long stretches alone in bed, unable to play or sing as he once did. Though he died surrounded by some family, many others refused to come. Ray Charles died on June 10, 2004, at the age of 73 from liver failure. The silence of his last days is heavy as the music that once made the world dance. Spalding Gray, born on June 5, 1941, joined The Nanny in 1997 as Dr. Jack Miller at age 56, lending the show a cerebral charm with his gentle voice and reflective manner. His character was calming and insightful, a grounding presence in Fran's chaotic world. However, behind the calm exterior of Spalding's screen persona lay a man constantly unraveling. A monologist best known for swimming to Cambodia, he made a name for himself by dissecting his personal demons on stage, yet those performances became both therapy and torment. Spalding's marriage to Kathy Russo was overshadowed by his unresolved grief and sexual compulsions. Though they had 3 children, including a son born with a rare developmental disorder, the household was fraught with tension and unmet emotional needs. After a devastating car accident in Ireland in 2001 left him with a fractured skull and deep neurological pain, Spalding spiraled into depression, haunted by suicidal ideation. He attempted suicide several times and was hospitalized, but found no peace. The brilliance that once captivated audiences became eclipsed by his suffering. On January 10, 2004, he left from the Staten Island ferry into New York Harbor, his body found 2 months later. He died by suicide at the age of 62, a man who could articulate the pain of the world yet couldn't escape his own. Daryl Hickman, born on July 28, 1931, took on the role of Dr./Mr. Binder in The Nanny in 1997 at 66 years old, presenting a character who was gentle, well-spoken, and dependable. Yet Daryl's off-screen life bore a depth of sadness that contradicted the warmth of his presence. A child actor turned introspective adult, Daryl's early fame in the 1940s became a burden as he aged out of Hollywood's favor. Though he later found modest success as a television executive and acting teacher, he never recaptured the glory of his youth. He married actress Pamela Lincoln in 1959, and they had 2 sons, but their marriage was strained by his spiritual crises and her untreated bipolar disorder. The death of their youngest son, who drowned at age 8, tore the family apart. Pamela fell into a deep depression and left Daryl shortly afterward. He retreated from the spotlight entirely, living in a modest home in Los Angeles, devoting his days to writing existential essays few ever read. For decades, he was estranged from his surviving son, who blamed him for the fractured family. Daryl Hickman died on May 22, 2024, at the age of 92, his final years spent in isolation, consumed by grief and the shadows of a life that never fully healed. Zach Norman was born on May 27, 1940, and took on the role of Uncle Jack in The Nanny in 1993, at the age of 53. Uncle Jack, a recurring yet unforgettable presence, was defined by his raucous humor, flashy demeanor, and exuberant family loyalty, always showing up unannounced with wild business schemes or questionable advice. A longtime character actor, Norman struggled for decades to break into leading roles, often relegated to supporting parts in B-movies despite his versatility. His promising career was derailed in the late 1970s after a failed production investment left him financially ruined, forcing him to live out of his car for several months. In love, he married artist Nancy Norman, but their marriage slowly deteriorated under the pressures of his volatile temperament and prolonged absences. The two divorced after 18 years, and their only daughter, Elise, became estranged, leaving Zach devastated. He reportedly attempted reconciliation several times, only to be met with silence. He suffered 4 key tragedies: bankruptcy, losing contact with his daughter, the mental breakdown of his brother, and being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in his 70s. Despite brief appearances at fan conventions, he lived his final years in a small assisted living facility in California, his once flamboyant personality muted by illness and loneliness. He died on April 28, 2024, at the age of 83, from complications related to Parkinson's disease. Alan Rich, born on February 8, 1926, began portraying Polly the pawnbroker and the judge on The Nanny in 1993 at the age of 67, playing roles that radiated fairness, wisdom, and understated dignity. However, Alan's real life was riddled with injustice and sorrow. Once blacklisted in the 1950s for alleged communist ties, Alan's flourishing stage and film career was abruptly shattered. Though eventually exonerated, the stigma followed him for decades, leaving him financially destitute and professionally sidelined. He married Elaine Stern in the late 1940s, and they had 2 children, but the trauma of his blacklisting led to chronic depression and emotional withdrawal, turning their marriage into a hollow shell. His daughter struggled with substance abuse and disappeared for several years. His son, after coming out as gay, became estranged due to Alan's inability to reconcile with it at the time. Though they later reconciled, Alan carried deep guilt for years of silence. In the 2000s, he was diagnosed with dementia, a cruel irony for a man who had fought so hard to be remembered. As his memory faded, so did the presence of his family, many of whom stopped visiting. Alan Rich passed away on August 22, 2020, at the age of 94, his legacy muted by time, his final years clouded by the very forgetting he had once feared most. Steve Lawrence was born on July 8, 1935, and began portraying Morty Fine, Fran's doting, slightly overbearing father, on The Nanny in 1995, when he was 60 years old. Morty was the quintessential New York dad, always quick with a one-liner, fiercely protective of Fran, and deeply devoted to his wife Sylvia. In reality, Steve Lawrence's life was marked by early musical triumphs followed by a long, painful decline. As half of the duo Steve and Edie with his wife Edie Gorm, Steve reached soaring heights in the 1950s and 60s. But the shifting music industry left him behind, and he struggled to stay relevant. Edie's death in 2013 devastated him, triggering a cascade of depression and cognitive decline. Though the pair had one son, David, their relationship became strained over disagreements about Steve's medical care and financial decisions. He faced multiple hardships: the loss of Edie, a public battle with dementia, estrangement from old friends, and financial instability after being defrauded by a longtime business manager. In his last years, Alzheimer's slowly erased his sharp wit and memories, and he spent his days in a nursing home in Los Angeles, no longer recognizing even his closest family. Steve Lawrence died on March 7, 2024, at the age of 88, from complications of Alzheimer's disease. Charles Shaughnessy was born on February 9, 1955, and began his role as Maxwell Sheffield in The Nanny in 1993 at the age of 38. Maxwell, a wealthy Broadway producer and single father, was portrayed as intelligent, principled, and constantly flustered by Fran's antics, yet clearly smitten. Shaughnessy brought a refined charm to the role, but the man behind the suave accent carried shadows from a life overshadowed by personal torment. Born into British aristocracy, he was expected to live a certain way: tradition, legacy, restraint. But Charles long harbored artistic dreams that clashed with his family's expectations, leading to a permanent rift. His marriage to actress Susan Follender endured decades, but not without pain. Their youngest daughter, Madeline, struggled for years with substance abuse and was estranged from the family until a brief reconciliation in 2023. Charles's career post-Nanny was sporadic, filled with voiceover work and soap operas, a far cry from the acclaim he had hoped for. He faced 4 tragedies: alienation from his family of origin, his daughter's addiction, the collapse of his production company, and a nervous breakdown in 2015 that led to a psychiatric hold. Now 70 years old, Shaughnessy lives reclusively in a modest cottage in the English countryside, avoiding interviews, and spending his days writing unread plays and feeding the neighborhood strays. Fran Dresser, born on September 30, 1957, stepped into the iconic role of Fran Fine in 1993 at the age of 36. Her character, an outspoken, fashion-forward nanny from Queens, was a whirlwind of charm, comedy, and undeniable charisma. Fran Fine's unique voice and endless supply of sequined outfits made her a pop culture phenomenon, but behind the laughter was a woman fighting an invisible war. Dresser's acting success masked a tragic personal journey marked by deep trauma and persistent health struggles. In 1985, she was the victim of a brutal home invasion and assault, an experience that left lifelong psychological scars. Her marriage to Peter Mark Jacobson, her high school sweetheart, unraveled when he came out as gay, leading to a divorce that, while amicable, left her emotionally gutted. They had no children, though Fran later admitted she had longed for motherhood but faced complications from cancer treatments. Diagnosed with uterine cancer in 2000 after years of being misdiagnosed, she fought a lonely and painful battle for her health. In the years that followed, she became a tireless advocate for women's health and LGBTQ+ rights, yet privately she struggled with bouts of depression and feelings of isolation. She faced 4 significant tragedies: the assault, her divorce, infertility, and her cancer. As of 2025, at the age of 67, Fran lives alone in Malibu, surrounded by dogs and distant memories. Daniel Davis, born on November 26, 1945, took on the role of the sarcastic butler Niles in The Nanny in 1993, at the age of 48. Niles was clever, biting, and fiercely loyal, an ever-watchful eye in the Sheffield mansion, and an unforgettable part of the show's rhythm. Daniel Davis's portrayal was pitch perfect, yet few fans knew the deep anguish that haunted his private life. A classically trained actor, Davis had long sought the respect of the theater world, but found himself typecast after The Nanny. His Broadway dreams fell apart after a production he led in 2003 collapsed due to funding issues, leaving him in debt and blacklisted by certain producers. Though openly gay, Davis never found a long-term partner, citing in interviews his belief that "there's too much of me to love." He lived alone, and while he doted on nieces and nephews, he often confided in friends that holidays were unbearable. His health began to deteriorate in the late 2010s with the onset of neuropathy, which eventually confined him to a wheelchair. For tragic constants defined his life: romantic loneliness, professional typecasting, chronic illness, and deep-seated anxiety from being closeted for decades in a hostile industry. In 2025, Davis is 79 years old, residing in an assisted living facility in Arkansas. Lauren Lane, born on February 2, 1961, portrayed Cece Babcock in The Nanny starting in 1993 at the age of 32. Cece was a sharp, ambitious, and sophisticated character, always vying for the affection of Maxwell Sheffield. Her relentless pursuit of Maxwell, despite being the show's antagonist, mirrored the personal struggles Lane faced in real life. While she achieved significant recognition from The Nanny, her career never quite reached the heights she hoped for. After the show ended, she found herself struggling to secure substantial roles. She experienced several failed relationships and marriages, which were often marked by her overbearing desire for success in a male-dominated industry. Lane married twice, but both unions ended in bitter divorces. She had one child from her second marriage, a son named Jesse. Despite this, she spent many years living in isolation, balancing motherhood and a dwindling acting career. Her career's steep decline came alongside significant mental health struggles, which she rarely spoke about publicly. Throughout the years, Lane faced the immense pressure of competing in Hollywood, dealing with rejection, and confronting her own insecurities. By 2025, at the age of 64, she is living a quiet life in New York City, far removed from the spotlight. Nicole Tom, born on March 23, 1978, started portraying Maggie Sheffield in The Nanny in 1993 at the age of 15. Maggie was the sweet, gentle, and shy eldest daughter, whose personal growth mirrored Tom's own transition from child star to adult actress. While her career initially seemed promising with several guest appearances and roles in films like The Mighty Ducks, the harsh realities of growing up in Hollywood quickly set in. Tom's acting career never fully flourished beyond The Nanny, and she struggled with the pressure of maintaining the good girl image. Her personal life was also tumultuous. She faced a series of heartbreaks, including a long-term relationship that ended in betrayal. In 2006, she was involved in a serious car accident, which kept her away from work for several months. Her physical recovery was long and painful, but it only added to the emotional scars she had carried for years. Despite her struggle with public perception and her own self-doubt, Tom found solace in a small circle of friends. She later married but divorced within a few years, unable to reconcile her personal desires with the reality of her career's decline. As of 2025, Tom is now 47 years old, living a relatively quiet life and occasionally taking on small acting roles. She often speaks about the challenges of being a child star and the pressure it placed on her personal and professional life. Renee Taylor, born on March 19, 1933, portrayed Sylvia Fine, Fran's overbearing yet loving mother, in The Nanny starting in 1993 at the age of 60. Sylvia was known for her larger-than-life personality and comedic antics, yet beneath her humor, Taylor's life was filled with personal heartache. Despite her immense talent, Taylor's career in Hollywood was constantly overshadowed by the industry's failure to appreciate her skill as a character actress. She had been married to actor Joseph Bologna for over 30 years, a union that was often filled with turmoil. The couple's relationship was plagued by infidelities, arguments, and a profound emotional distance that they could not overcome. Taylor and Bologna's struggles were frequently played out in the public eye, overshadowing her successes. They had one child, a son, who faced his own struggles with addiction, which caused further strain on their family dynamic. Taylor's final years were marked by the pain of losing her husband to cancer in 2021, a loss that broke her heart. By 2025, at the age of 92, Taylor is living in seclusion, far removed from the world of Hollywood. She occasionally speaks out about the difficulty of growing old in the industry and the personal sacrifices she made throughout her life. Despite her immense popularity as Sylvia Fine, the woman behind the role has lived a quiet, often sorrowful life, haunted by the ghosts of her past. Madeline Zema, born on September 16, 1985, began her role as Grace Sheffield in The Nanny in 1993 at the age of 8. Grace was the adorable and intelligent youngest daughter, often portrayed as the voice of reason in the chaos around her. Zema's real life, however, was marked by profound struggles. She was thrust into the limelight at an incredibly young age, which came with its own set of challenges. While she managed to find success post The Nanny, with roles in films like The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, her career never reached the heights she had hoped for. Zema faced significant pressure to maintain a perfect image, leading to bouts of depression and eating disorders in her teenage years. The strain of constant scrutiny also led to difficulties in her personal relationships. Zema married in her early 20s, but the marriage was short-lived due to her inability to balance the expectations of fame with her need for a personal life. Following the divorce, she struggled to find stable relationships, often resorting to fleeting romances to fill the void. By 2025, Zema is 39 years old, living in Los Angeles. While she continues to act sporadically, much of her time is spent focusing on mental health advocacy, hoping to shed light on the hidden struggles of those in the entertainment industry. Her career remains stagnant, but she is determined to carve out a meaningful life outside of Hollywood's grasp. Benjamin Salsbury, born on October 19, 1980, played the mischievous middle child Brighton Sheffield in The Nanny starting in 1993 at the age of 13. Brighton's character was full of wit and charm, often getting into trouble with his antics. Off-screen, Salsbury's life was far more complicated. After The Nanny ended, his career in Hollywood failed to take off as he had hoped, leading him to face the reality of being just another former child star. While trying to break into adult roles, Salsbury struggled with addiction, his life spiraling into a series of rehab stints and public breakdowns. His romantic relationships, including a high-profile engagement, were also short-lived, marred by his emotional instability and insecurities. Salsbury's personal life took another blow when his father passed away unexpectedly in 2008, an event that sent him into a deep depression. His grief manifested in further substance abuse, which led to the collapse of his remaining relationships. As of 2025, Salsbury is 44 years old, still battling his demons. He has distanced himself from the public eye, occasionally giving interviews where he discusses his struggles with mental health and addiction, hoping to inspire others who are going through similar battles. Who is your favorite character from The Nanny? How do you feel knowing that some of the actors have passed away? Don't hesitate to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this content, please remember to like, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss future videos. Thank you so much.